King George V's children. Part 2. Scandalous siblings. Many of you have been asking me to continue my series on Queen Victoria's descendants with videos on her great-grandchildren. Well, here's a start. King George V's two eldest sons both took their turns as king. The first, Edward VIII, abdicated amid scandal because he wanted to marry a divorced woman, Wallis Simpson, and because he never really wanted to be king anyway. He nearly toppled the British monarchy in the process. His younger brother picked up the pieces and became King George VI. He was a shy man with a stutter, but he and his admirable wife, Elizabeth, tirelessly boosted morale during World War II and became heroes to their people. I went into detail about the two brother kings in last week's video, but today let's meet their 4 younger siblings, who never wore crowns but got into plenty of mischief. They were a princess who dedicated herself to improving the lives of women, and 3 princes, a stoic war hero, an artistic bisexual tomcat, and a lonely boy who died tragically young. Let's meet them. Mary, Princess Royal, was named Victoria Alexandra Alice Mary after her great-grandmother, Queen Victoria, her grandmother, Queen Alexandra of Denmark, her great-aunt Alice, Duchess of Hesse and by Rhine, with whom she shared a birthday, and her mother, Mary of Teck. She was educated at home alongside her older brothers and was especially close to David. As the only sister among 5 boys, Mary took to athleticism rather than dressing up. She became fluent in German and French and developed a great love of horses and racing. During World War I, the teenage princess visited wounded soldiers with her mother. At 21, Mary enrolled in a nursing course. She began the Princess Mary's Christmas Gift Fund, which provided 2.5 million boxes filled with cigarettes, lighters, and candy for everyone in the king's uniform on Christmas Day. She took an active role in promoting the Girl Guides, the Voluntary Aid Detachment, and the Land Girls, organizations which provided girls and women the opportunities to work and support the war effort. She was shy and overprotected. Her playboy brother David worried that their parents would never let her out long enough for a man to fall in love with her, and that his favorite sister would end up a spinster. At 24, Mary became engaged to 39-year-old Henry Lascelles, heir to the earldom of Harewood. Their courtship happened rather quickly, and it was speculated that the marriage was arranged by her parents to prove how British the family was. There were rumors that Henry only proposed because he lost a bet at his gentleman's club. David was glad that Mary was getting out of Buckhouse prison, but thought her groom was too old and ugly for her. But he's rich, he added. I hope to God he'll make her happy. Their wedding at Westminster Abbey was the first to be covered by fashion magazines, including Vogue. The newlyweds' appearance on the balcony of Buckingham Palace attracted a massive crowd. Girls and women in the British Empire called Mary, Marie, May, Miriam, and the like formed the Marys of the Empire and raised money towards a wedding gift. The princess gave this fund and £10,000 of her own money to the Girl Guides for the purchase of Foxleigh Estate, which remains the Girl Guides' retreat to this day. Mary and Henry had 2 sons, George and Gerald. They had a London mansion and a country estate in Yorkshire, on which Mary enjoyed a more private life and practicing her hobbies of interior design and landscaping. Many noted Henry's brusqueness, and there have been rumors that the marriage was less than happy, as portrayed by the Downton Abbey movie. But their son George refuted these claims, writing that his parents got on well together and had lots of friends and interests in common. Our mother was never so happy as when she and my father were embarked on some scheme together. In 1929, Henry inherited the earldom of Harewood. Mary thrived while managing the family's farming interests and became an expert in cattle breeding. The same year, her father created her Princess Royal, the title given to the monarch's eldest daughter. She was the 6th Princess Royal since 1631, when the title was created for Charles I's daughter, Princess Mary. She supported her brother David through the abdication crisis and went to visit him while the rest of the family shunned him. She did not attend her niece, Princess Elizabeth's wedding, claiming ill health, but really she was upset that David was not invited. During World War II, Mary was appointed the Chief Controller of the Auxiliary Territorial Service, the women's branch of the British Army. All non-medical women in uniform were part of the ATS, and they did a variety of jobs in support of the war effort, including cooking, clerking, and communications. They received 2/3 the pay of male soldiers. Mary traveled the country extensively to boost morale and visit units of the ATS, including the unit of her niece, Princess Elizabeth, who served as a truck driver and mechanic. She was appointed Air Chief Commander of Princess Mary's Royal Air Force Nursing Service and received the honorary rank of General in the British Army. Henry died in 1947, and Mary lived at Harewood House with her son, now the 7th Earl of Harewood, and helped raise her grandchildren. She represented Queen Elizabeth at the independence celebrations of Trinidad and Tobago in 1962 and Zambia in 1964. In 1965, while out walking with her son and grandchildren, Mary suffered a fatal heart attack and died at the age of 67. She was buried on the Harewood House estate with her husband. Prince Henry was a small child and suffered from frequent illnesses. His temperament was much like his brother Bertie's, and he also suffered several even more serious speech disorders and had knock knees and had to wear painful leg splints. On the advice of the family's tutor, his parents agreed to send him to school to spend time with other children. He was the first British royal to attend school, and he thrived there. He was not especially bright, but he had an aptitude for math and sport. He joined the football team and wrote his mother long, detailed letters about his matches. He moved on to Eton College, where he was a classmate of future King Leopold III of Belgium, and to Cambridge University, where he excelled socially, though not in academics. By this time, he had outgrown all of his brothers in height and build, and enjoyed excellent health and improved speech. Unlike his sailor family, Henry joined the Army and attended Sandhurst Military Academy. He thrived in the Army as well. His ambition was to command a regiment and spend as much time in service as possible. His parents were exceptionally proud and created him Duke of Gloucester. At 28, Henry accompanied his brother David on a big game hunting trip in Nairobi. There he met English Kenyan aviatrix, adventurer, horse race trainer, and author Beryl Markham. Beryl was married, but she and the prince began a love affair. When he returned to London, she came with him. He rented her rooms in Grosvenor Hotel, close to Buckingham Palace, and he openly hosted parties with her. Queen Mary was shocked, and Prince David was delighted that for once her blue-eyed boy was in trouble and not him. King George thought keeping his son busy with royal duties would distract him from the scandalous love affair, and he sent him on diplomatic visits to Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, and to Ethiopia for the coronation of Haile Selassie. The lovers did break up, and Beryl's husband threatened to publish the prince's love letters, so his solicitors paid the couple an annual allowance until Beryl's death in 1985. The 29-year-old prince decided to settle down, so he mumbled a proposal to his best friend's younger sister, Lady Alice Montague Douglas Scott, daughter of the Duke of Buccleuch. A grand wedding at Westminster Abbey was planned, but Alice's father died a fortnight before, so a quiet family ceremony was held at Buckingham Palace instead. Despite the reduced occasion and the November chill, over 1 million people came out to see the bride wrapped in an ermine stole, and she was known as the Winter Princess from then on. Henry was appointed personal aide-de-camp to his father and then to his elder brothers when they took their turns on the throne. The abdication greatly affected Henry, who had been living a quiet, anonymous life with his wife and the army. But once George VI became king, he asked his brothers, Princes Henry and George, to take on more royal duties to support him. The king came to rely most on Henry, with whom he had always been closest. Henry never complained and supported his brother and niece dutifully for the rest of his life. He did not eschew a glass of whiskey or the occasional blasphemous oath. In fact, he liked whiskey so much that upon a visit to his family, his mother suggested that he had better bring his own supply. Henry spent the entire first year of World War II in France supporting the troops, boosting morale, and reporting valuable information back to London. He wrote to his wife, "Motoring about is not nice as many villages are being bombed." But he didn't tell her that he was nearly killed twice. He risked his life to drive to Belgium, where he secretly met his old school chum, King Leopold III, and encouraged him not to surrender to the Nazis, but to no avail. Henry was steadfast in his service, but was often depressed at the end of leaves when he had to bid Alice farewell and return to the front. Alice suffered 2 miscarriages and then gave birth to their first child, William, in 1941. Months after becoming a father, Henry was sent on a dangerous diplomatic mission to the Middle East, India, and East Africa. The king promised to act as guardian to his son if anything should happen to him. He returned home safely, but after younger brother George was killed in a plane crash, it was decided that Henry should be kept out of harm's way. In 1944, Henry and Alice welcomed a second son, Richard, and Henry was appointed Governor General of Australia. He was a popular leader, and he and his wife traveled extensively through the country in Henry's own plane. They returned home in 1947 and continued to serve King George VI and Elizabeth II with public appearances and tours. In 1965, while driving home from Winston Churchill's funeral, Henry suffered a stroke and crashed his car. Other strokes followed, and he required a wheelchair and lost the ability to speak. In 1972, his son William died in a plane crash while flying in a competition. Alice didn't tell her husband, who was too ill to understand. He died in 1974, age 74, the last of his siblings. He was buried with several of them at Frogmore. Alice died in 2004, age 102, and holds the record for the longest living British royal. Prince George was the most intelligent and attractive of his siblings, and the black sheep of the family. He played piano, spoke French and Italian fluently, and had a strong artistic streak. He followed his elder brother Henry to preparatory school and then to Naval College. He suffered seasickness and hated the Navy. By the time he came of age, World War I was over, but he served as a naval officer in the 1920s and earned his pilot's license. George served briefly in the Foreign and Home Offices, the first British royal to work in the civil service. In 1931, he accompanied his brother David on a tour of South America. Despite their 8-year age gap, the brothers were cut from the same dapper, gin-soaked cloth and were very close. They often hit the town together and shared a circle of friends. There were strong rumors that George was bisexual and had affairs with musical star Jessie Matthews, writer Cecil Roberts, cabaret star Florence Mills, socialites Poppy Baring and Ethel Wigham, and novelist Barbara Cartland. He had a 19-year on-off affair with playwright Noel Coward. The pair once walked through the streets of London in drag and were arrested on suspicion of prostitution. In 1932, George married his cousin, Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark, granddaughter of both King George I of Greece and Tsar Alexander II of Russia. The wedding was the first to be broadcast by wireless, and the recording control room was placed underneath the unknown warrior's tomb in Westminster Abbey. The Anglican wedding was followed by a private Greek Orthodox service in the chapel at Buckingham Palace. George was created Duke of Kent. The couple got on very well. He liked her independent spirit and the fact that she did not complain when he drove his sports car too fast. The attractive and chic prince and princess were the toast of London and surrounded themselves with artists and interesting people. George's family hoped that marriage might settle him down, but instead he partied harder. He had a menage a trois relationship with Jorge Ferreira, son of the Argentine ambassador, and American heiress Kiki Preston. Kiki was known in upper-class circles as the girl with the silver syringe. She introduced the prince to cocaine, morphine, and other drugs. Prince David got his brother clean and kept him away from Kiki. He later wrote that he believed George had fathered several illegitimate children, including a son by Kiki, Michael Canfield, who was adopted by an American couple and went on to marry Caroline Lee Bouvier, Jackie Kennedy's younger sister. When George V died, Prince George and his 3 older brothers stood around their father's coffin, creating a ceremony known as the Vigil of the Princes. This rite was repeated at the state funeral of the Queen Mother, Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, and will be part of the laying in state of Queen Elizabeth II when the time comes. George was appointed personal aide-de-camp to his brother when he became King Edward VIII. Following the abdication, he served as George VI aide-de-camp as well. At the outbreak of World War II, the prince returned to active service as a rear admiral in the Royal Air Force. He was kept out of harm's way, but worked to boost morale. In 1942, Prince George and 14 others took off in an RAF flying boat from Scotland heading to Iceland. The plane crashed on a rock off the coast, and all but one aboard were killed. All of the papers relating to the mission mysteriously vanished, leading to several conspiracy theories, including that the prince was on a secret mission to Sweden to negotiate peace with the Nazis, and that he was intentionally murdered by the British government because of his Nazi sympathies. George was the first British prince in 450 years to be killed in military service. He was buried in Queen Victoria's mausoleum at Frogmore. His 6-year-old son Edward succeeded him as Duke of Kent. Alexandra was just 5 and Michael only 7 weeks old when they lost their father. Prince John was the baby of the family. He was named John despite its unlucky association with the royal family. The only king with that name had been back in the 12th century. King John was a cruel and terrible ruler and was forced to sign the Magna Carta by his disgruntled people. He also lost the crown jewels in the sea. The future Edward VII named his youngest son Alexander John in 1871, but the baby was born premature and died at just 1 day old. This Prince John, called Johnny, was everyone's darling. King George once told U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt that all of his children were obedient except John. By the age of 4, he began showing developmental delays, and he was likely on the autism spectrum. He also suffered epileptic seizures. At age 6, he was not allowed to attend his parents' coronation, for fear that he might have a seizure or behave in some other way that would embarrass the family. As he grew older, he was allowed to appear more in public with his family, despite his continuing behavioral difficulties. He was educated by tutors with his siblings at the Sandringham estate. When John was 7, his last sibling, George, 3 years older, went away to boarding school, but their parents didn't believe that John was capable of attending school. 2 years later, World War I broke out, and with increased demands on their time, the king and queen were not able to see their youngest child often. John was left alone with his nanny, Charlotte Bill. They moved into Wood Farm, a farmhouse on the Sandringham estate. His grandmother, Queen Alexandra of Denmark, visited him often, and the two kept a garden together, which was one of John's greatest pleasures in life. After his 11th birthday, John was not seen in public again. He was declining physically and mentally, and his doctors did not believe he would live to adulthood. His tutors were dismissed, and his formal education was stopped. The prince was proud of his house and garden, but was lonely, so his mother broke with royal protocol and invited local children to the estate to play with him, which he enjoyed very much. His siblings visited as well, but John's frequent, intense seizures distressed them. In 1918, the family spent a happy Christmas together at Sandringham. John died in his sleep January 18, 1919, age 13. His mother wrote to a friend, "I cannot say how grateful we feel to God for having taken him in such a peaceful way. He just slept quietly into his heavenly home. No pain, no struggle, just peace for the poor, little troubled spirit." No member of the royal family has been given the name John since. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other royal history videos. If you really want to help, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A link is in the description. Thank you for watching.